Welcome to Backyard Bows. Hey, welcome to Backyard Bows. I'm Brandon, and with hunting season right around the corner, I figured that this would be a perfect time to do this video and answer some of these questions that we've got several times. And the question is, if you could set up your perfect hunting arrow, what would it be? I'm spoiled. I love to mix up my arrows. I love to mix up my fletchings, the arrows, the broadheads, all of it. I like testing different stuff. And this season we'll kind of go through a whole bunch of different arrow setups, and we'll test a whole bunch of different things in the field. But if I had to pinpoint one thing or steer a beginner, maybe a first-time hunter in the right direction of what that perfect arrow setup for me would be, this is what it would be. And we'll kind of walk you through this. And the reason that this came about is I'm shooting in the backyard with a buddy. You know, he's shooting with his field points and in the backyard, and I asked him what his arrow setup was, and he said he wasn't sure yet. And I'm thinking, man, the hunting season is 10 days away. And I like to start shooting with either the broadheads or the practice mechanical that I am going to use at least a month. You know, I like 6 weeks in advance. Really, you know, when I go out and do my daily reps, I like shooting with what I'm going to be hunting with for as long as possible. And then I mentioned to him, hey, you might want to start figuring out what you're going to shoot, and especially what broadhead you're going to use, because, you know, if you don't know, you throw a broadhead on a bow that's tuned with a field point, there's a good chance that it could be off a little bit to the left and a little down. You know, you just don't know until you put it on there and shoot. Sometimes you get a fucking curveball and they go all over the place. So, and then you kind of have to go back and retune to that broadhead. So it's very important to kind of get some reps in before you get into the field, in case you didn't know that. So, and that made me think, man, what a perfect time to do it. Let's do it now. So the first thing, you're gonna need an arrow. And what I had kind of discussed in a previous video, a couple different previous videos, one where we help you build an arrow online, and then two, when we did a video about fletching some arrows and kind of setting them up. You're gonna need to figure out, and it's pretty easy to do this, especially just for beginners and just to start. It would be nice to get on whatever arrow company you're going to use. I used Eason's, and online you can find a graph, and they will tell you per your poundage and draw length what arrow spinage you should use, what they recommend. I would go with that just to start. I mean, that's a good starting point. As you kind of grow into your hunting, and as more time goes on, you're gonna use different spinages, you're gonna use different arrow weights, you're gonna mess with different weights up front. And that's kind of a fun part about it all, but I think at the beginning, starting with the spinage that's recommended for your draw weight is probably the best way to go. So for me, I'm 30 inches with a 70-pound draw weight. They recommend anywhere from a 300 spine to 340 spine at the lowest. I'm gonna go with the 300 spines. And I just will have them send them to me. I like the blazer vanes. I actually like the Bully blazer vanes, which are kind of like a hard plastic, which I feel like are a little bit better for hunting. And I'll get those on there. They always send them with kind of nocks in there, which I will change out for lighted nocks here in a second. And then I like to cut and insert my arrows. One, because sometimes you get them in the mail and all of a sudden they're not the right length. I've even gone and gotten arrows cut at the very beginning at like a Cabela's, and then I realized that they were a ½ inch too short. So I like to cut them, and I got a nice little setup here, so I like to cut them myself. And that way I know that they're perfectly square, they're perfect to the length, and then the inserts, which I think is important to get them glued in nice and tight, and the insert that you choose to use for different types of your archery season, you can do properly. There's two different inserts that I like to use for hunting, and they call it a half out. So a half out insert where you have some of the insert inside, which is glued, and then there's a thicker outer part that sits on that top shelf of the arrow, which provides support for that broadhead, which is going to take the most blunt force when you're shooting, you know, at whatever you're shooting at. So I love these. I've used them for years. With this attached, I think it is the most reusable arrow that you can get. Okay, with that insert on the top out there, it's gonna allow you to reuse your arrow through that hunting season, which if you fling as many arrows as I do, that's kind of nice because, man, I'm shooting at everything. You got a coyote, I'm addicted to does, you know, so, you know, I'm shooting a ton of arrows through my season. Last year we took 8 arrows, and with this particular arrow setup, I'll give you a little info. I shot 6 deer with the same arrow, same broadhead, same insert, same fletching. Okay, so that kind of tells you the strength of the arrow. So I love full metal jackets. They got a carbon inside, metal outside. They're really nice and solid. The 300 spine, it's a nice stiff arrow, but it's perfect for those 20, 30, 40 yard hunting shots. Man, this thing is rock solid, okay? Unless you're hitting heavy bone, or you make a full pass and it goes into the ground and hits a stone, these arrows, you're most likely gonna be able to recover your arrow and reuse. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna you got a pair of pliers, pop that knockoff that they put in there, okay? And I always, especially during the hunting season, I'm gonna use a lighted knock. And I got some nocturnals here. I've used several different lighted knocks. The nocturnals work really well. I like the turning on and off mechanism in them. So when you shoot the arrow, that top little button gets pressed, knock turns on. And then just to turn it off, you can flip another arrow upside down, use your broadhead, get it in there, pop it back up, and you can turn it off. Something else that I want to point out is that these nocturnals, I've shot a couple at nighttime and did a little test, and we just let them run overnight. And I think one of these nocturnals, it was on for like 3 days. And I love that, because if you do shoot right at dusk and you're trying to track an animal, sometimes, especially if the arrow sticks in the animal and he runs off, it's really important to find and recover that arrow and get a blood read off of that arrow. So the nocturnal animal helps you find and recover your arrow. It also helps you kind of get a visual on your shot placement during the actual hunt. I think hunting without lighted knocks, there's just such a benefit to hunting with a lighted knock. On your hunting setup, I think it's a hands down, you should always have one on there. So I got green ones to go with my green fletchings, to go with my green broadheads. I kind of like an arrow that's all matched up. These things are gonna look nice and sleek when we're done. So then on the other end, I'm gonna cut my arrow. So right here, I got this Easton arrow cutter. I love this one. You can adjust the length to cut it all different lengths. So I'm gonna put it on 30 inches. I'm gonna cut that arrow. We'll get a nice clean cut. And then we'll take our little kind of square sander up here that bevels that top part. We'll kind of sand that down, and then we're gonna take some alcohol, some Q-tips, and we're really gonna clean that out really, really good so we can get some great connection with the epoxy and the insert. And then again, so what I have here is I have two different kinds. I got one aluminum and one stainless steel. The stainless steel is a little bit heavier. Actually, it's a lot heavier. It's over 70 grains, and the aluminum one, I think somewhere is in the 20, 25 grains. So I'm gonna go with the aluminum ones. With this particular arrow, I like the FOC. I like the way these things fly. But if you want a little bit more weight up front, which helps you get a little bit more kinetic energy and penetration, you can use those stainless steel ones. Both of these you can order on Amazon, or you can find them in your local shop, but I love these. Okay, so what we're gonna do, and I use either the epoxy that they're gonna give you, and I like the one that you can just buy. This one's just a Gorilla Glue, two-part epoxy. You can put out a little bit amount just in case you only want to do 3 arrows. You can just put out just what you need. We're going to mix it up. Make sure that you mix those 2 parts really good together. Let it sit for just a second, and once it kind of changes colors, gets a little bit murky, that's when you're going to want to add a little bit to your insert. I add a little bit on the top, and I kind of do an inward-outward rotating, kind of real nice and slow, and kind of get that insert all the way in, give it a twist, get it out, and it'll kind of suck that glue down in there. And then we're gonna let these things sit overnight. One question that I get a lot is either mechanical or fixed. And I have used every possible broadhead you can think of. It was one of the things I was like addicted to at the beginning, was seeing what different broadheads. I don't know why I was so fascinated with it, but man, I have used so many broadheads in the field, and my own experience, and then I'm also going to give you a little feedback from some veteran hunters and also a tracker. So my own experience is 100% an adjustable mechanical broadhead. Unless you're a perfect shot, a fixed blade is better. Okay, and again, so that leaves you no margin for error, because if there is a little bit of error, your insurance is going to be that mechanical broadhead. So unless you shoot a little bit back, sometimes that larger cut that mechanical broadhead is going to give you is going to nick a lung, it's going to nick an artery. That's going to save the day. Okay, and then also the other most important thing is blood. Okay, you want as much blood pouring out of that critter as possible, and you're going to get that from a mechanical. Now, unless you're on the button, and again, I feel like I'm a good shot. I take my time, I'm patient. I think my shot IQ has really gone, kind of been advanced over the last couple years, and I really do trust myself. But man, if you can have a little bit of insurance on your backside, just in case there is something that makes it off a little bit, I think you're gonna get a better chance of recovering that critter with a mechanical. And that goes across the board from all veteran hunters I've ever talked to. Even the ones that still use fixed blade broadheads, they're gonna tell you you'll probably get a better entry and exit wound with a mechanical, you'll probably get more blood with mechanical. And then the third is a tracker. So I've talked to a couple different trackers, you know, that have dogs that help people track deers, and without a doubt, they all say you get the most blood, you get the biggest entry and exit wounds, and it's easiest to find a deer if somebody's using mechanicals. So that's my 2 cents. So for deer hunting, even though I will use a couple fixed blade broadheads this year because we started backyard bows and I want to review everything and kind of give you guys some input, if I was to suggest to somebody what is your best bet, it's going to be an adjustable. And for years I used rages. I shot more deer than anything else with some rages, but now I can say personally, I think the Schwackers are the best adjustable on the market. Okay, you get a 2-inch cut, you get 100 grain, 125 grain options. They are as solid as you can get, and they are also as streamlined as you can get. So out to 50 yards, these things are on the money. They're extremely easy to tune. They come with a practice head, which is really important for you to kind of get those daily reps. And then they're extremely easy to reuse. So like I said, that same arrow that I have over there hanging on that deer, I shot 5 or 6 deer with it last year. And by the last deer, one of the blades on the Schwacker bent a little bit, and I think it's because it was a rock in the ground, not necessarily the deer, but these things are solid. Okay, they get great penetration, they get past that rib cage, they open up inside, devastating to any organs, nice 2-inch cut, thick blade, and the most important part to me is they're very consistent. Second, additional audio. My favorite part about the Schwackers is they have this kind of a backboard. So as they open up, they have a support system for those blades, which I love, and I think that's the biggest difference between them and maybe rages, which are very similar, is that there's something, once it gets in past that rib cage and those things open up, they are not closing. I mean, and that backboard, that little peg at the bottom that lands on the actual broadhead, it just makes it as solid for those blades as possible. I think that's my favorite part about Schwackers. So you put one of these on the edge of here, that's kind of our final touch. We got our outsert, kind of that half outsert, which creates a really, really nice solid tip of that arrow that's gonna support that broadhead. And then you have an amazing arrow, Easton full metal jackets. You can't go wrong with them. I've hunted with them for years. In my opinion, one of the best arrows on the market, if not the best. And then I just go blazer vanes. I have a little shelf over there. I got probably 20 different vanes in it, and I'll mix and match and mess around with them. But in the end, blazer vanes, bully vanes, those are the ones that I go with for my hunting season. And then this year I'm going to go with some nocturnals. The 2 things I will say about fletchings that I want to input on is, 1, I don't think it matters as much as what shape, size, and material the fletching is made of, as much as it is glued on properly, evenly, and that there's some care to putting them on. The last thing you want to do is have one come off in the middle of a hunt. I like white. So white, 1 fletching, 2 fletching, 3 fletching, as much white on that end of that as possible, even on your arrow if you can, just so you can get a good blood read. The blood read is so important into what the next steps are after that arrow shot and how you pursue that animal. I think that's super important to add in there for beginners, is getting a good blood read, because man, that can make or change whether you find that animal or not. I've tried different ones. Nocturnals seem to do a really nice job. My favorite part is just the way you turn them on and off. But this right here would be my perfect hunting arrow setup. For those of you who have been asking, you can't go wrong with this. I stand by it. So if you put one of these in the field, you put a good shot on an animal, there's a really, really good chance, 1, you're gonna be able to reuse this arrow, and 2, that critter's going down. So thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Hey, thanks for watching. If you haven't already, hit that like button, leave us a comment. I love interaction. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. We have so much more to come. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook for updates of anything else that we're going to review. If there's something that you're interested in, hit those links below and check them out. And make sure, no matter what your setup is, what bow you're shooting, get your reps in on the daily. We'll see you next week.